Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with Ivy Cap Ventures.
Our next session is going to be one, around leveraging behavior analytics for better gaming experience, which will be a power-packed conversation between the CTOs of the gaming sector. The session will aim to throw light on how, innovatively one can use behavioral analytics and create a 360-degree experience for users and also help in securing the platform from fraud and malware attacks, something that was also discussed in our earlier conversation. To moderate this, may I invite on stage Manu Balachandran, Assistant Editor of Forbes India. Please also note that this session will also have an open house after this, so keep your questions handy. Let me invite on stage our panelists, Rajat Bansal, CTO Games 24/7, Guruprasad, GV, Chief Architect Moonfrog, Avneet Rana, Co-founder and Director of Technology Baazi Games, and Satinder Singh, Head Solutions Architect, India DNB AWS. Over to you, Manu.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you, Brian, Bhavin, and Neeraj for that rather riveting session. It is such a pleasure to have you all join us at the Forbes India Presence AWS Mavericks, especially after an overwhelming 2 years when physical get-togethers had become something of a distant dream. Since our panelists have already been introduced, I would like to take a moment and thank them for joining us this evening for this panel discussion on leveraging behavior analytics for creating a better gaming experience. India's gaming industry is at the cusp of a disruption. As my colleague Nani mentioned, it is one of the fastest growing sunrise sectors in the world, expected to clock revenues of over $5 billion by 2025. The industry has already overtaken the US in terms of its user base that well exceeds over 300 million. Now, as we go ahead, it is pertinent to note that innovation is perhaps the single biggest pillar in keeping gamers engaged. Their plays generate a large amount of player telemetry and game event data, which provides insights into player behavior and their engagement with the game. This is where behavior analytics and impactful use of big data comes into play. Intelligence can be fed directly back into the game design and development process to maximize innovation and ensure that new products and features meet the demands and aspirations of the players. With that in mind, let me begin our discussion this evening with opening comments from all our panelists on where India's gaming industry stands at the moment, the kind of trends and segments that are seeing traction, and where India's gaming sector is headed now with metaverse and Web3 and the likes. So we'll start with Rajat and we'll go around to the others.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having us here. I'll say that from a gaming industry perspective, we are in a very, very interesting times, very exciting times. As some of the previous speakers told, we are almost hitting 2 billion from our India gaming industry, expected to go at least tenfold in next 10 years. And purely as a technologist, there's no better time to be in where you are building for such kind of a scale there. Now, coming to in terms of, as you said, that what trends are catching up. And purely one key distinguishing factor for any game to succeed is the kind of engaging content it provides. And not only the content, but how does it provide it in a very hyper-personalized way, which is very, very tailored to each unique individual there. The amount of data that we are generating these days is humongous, but how are we augmenting our capabilities to process that data, make real-time decisions, take feedback back into the loop there. And that's what will be, in my opinion, a very, very key differentiator as we move forward. You ask about Metaverse and Web 3.0. To me, these are again, some things which are in the infancy stage, where they are good to explore. Underlying tech like blockchain is phenomenal, but it will take time to mature to create a very engaging content out of it. So something that each of us will keep dabbling around and hoping that something will click, which will become the next big thing there.
Guru, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think gaming per se, it's an extremely interesting situation right now. I mean, I do remember in the early days of Moonfrog, we used to optimize games to be able to be playing on the low-end devices or the low networks. It has moved on from there, and now we are about giving the most premium user experience. Like users do have multiple options now. They are like spoiled for choices. It does make sense for us to start to differentiate there, and a lot of personalization aspects and how do you optimize for those user experiences come into play. A lot of things that have happened over the years, right? I mean, payments becoming a less of a hassle, especially for somebody like Moonfrog, who has been primarily on the in-app purchases kind of a business model. That has significantly helped. Networks getting better has helped. But in the recent times, what's also started to happen, which is extremely encouraging, is the tech ecosystem, more specifically the developer ecosystem. I see developers now actually wanting to do game development rather than, hey, that was just one of the options among with everything else, right? Now I see a lot of people coming to Moonfrog specifically who say, I want to move into game development, which is extremely encouraging because I think obviously business will follow where the talent is. And I think the talent is definitely getting attracted towards gaming. So that's pretty encouraging, right?
Absolutely. Avneet, your thoughts on where the sector is today and going forward?
I mean, yeah, definitely. As Rajat said, I mean, gaming has a lot of potential and it's grown a lot over the past few years. And especially we've seen growth in the gaming industry more than the online video platforms as well in the recent years. And it's grown a lot post-pandemic. But I feel, I mean, with great power that you have, there comes great responsibility as well, as they say. I mean, so fraud becomes more and more very important when you're catering to so many customers. So security becomes your responsibility. So I think, yeah.
We'll speak about fraud and security and all of that, but let me bring in Satinder here. Satinder, your thoughts from an outsider's point of view?
Working with customers like these, there are three broad trends that we see. The first one is the scale factor. And what uniquely differentiates gaming from some of the other industries, there are a lot of industries and companies would deal with scale, is the latency. Every millisecond counts. So you have to scale very rapidly while maintaining a consistent latency because this is directly related to gamers' experience. And from a tech standpoint, it requires a lot of capabilities from platform and applications so that you are able to scale up and scale down, because technically scaling down is technically more challenging than scaling up. So this is the first trend that we see, which is all around ensuring that your applications and your platform is robust, is meeting the performance requirements and giving the right kind of experience. The second one, and I think Guru touched upon this briefly, is all about developer experience. As you start thinking about challenge one, you're thinking about your developers should be focused on developing more capabilities, faster time to market, rather than thinking about undifferentiated heavy lifting. So how do you embed some of these tech things that I talked about right from gaming engine, so that the developers don't have to worry about infrastructure scaling, scale out, latency, blah, blah, blah. The third one that I think Rajat touched upon, this is this whole art of possible, which is metaverse and NFT. They look extremely promising. Worldwide, we see a lot of trends around it. But at the same time, how do I implement them? What are the things that I do currently? And when I'm thinking about that, there are two aspects. One is, do I fail fast? Okay. The second one is, if I succeed, how do I scale with the success that we have? I think these are broadly the three things that we see customers really interested in.
Interesting. Guru, you know, cloud game streaming networks are certainly exciting, but they don't seem like a sure shot bet at the moment. How do you feel about them, and what is the sort of future that it holds?
I think obviously the technology is extremely interesting. The ability to sort of stream your game over a remote server and you're not sort of bottlenecked by your personal devices to be able to experience the game. That said, I think especially in India, it is too early, primarily because you're bottlenecked on the network speeds. Some of these cloud servers, gaming servers expect a very good network. The technology itself, I think, will produce a lot of other maybe complementary technologies that will significantly be helpful. I'm seeing signs of that already. Like I think AWS already has a way to have your Android set up on your AWS AMI and deploy that and offer that as a sort of a remote gaming service also. The experience might be a little bit poor than the actual native device, but it also gives us the capability to distribute your game on multiple platforms. So these are like some of the side outcomes of some of these technologies. We would obviously be continue to looking at it. At this point, the network would be significantly a bottleneck.
True. Rajat, so in that sense, are there sort of clear infrastructure gaps where you will see, you like to see sort of startups rise or existing players take initiatives to sort that out?
More than gaps, it's like also that some of these things emerging, like as we talked about cloud streaming games. Like I feel that as 5G penetrates more, like that problem will get solved. The reliability of that bandwidth and the amount of that bandwidth that requires will get solved, and things seem to be like progressing in the right direction there. And with with services like now AWS, your scale up, scale down, handling peaks is becoming easier there. Like for example, in this IPL, like now your load goes up right from 655 to 705, you see 10 times the load. Now how do you prepare your systems for that kind of a load? Because 7 p.m. toss happens, everybody comes back and reflects and reviews the team there. So we came up with a very data science-based approach to say that can I predict what I will look like, used AWS underlying capabilities around auto-scaling, married those two to say that now it's hands-off-the-wheel infrastructure to scale up or scale down on demand. So to me, like the building blocks are there. It's just like you need to say that as a developer, as a technologist, how do you put those building blocks together and start like using it now and start preparing for future there.
True. Satinder, would you like to add to that?
No, I think Rajat brought out very relevant points because if you really look at the scale up and scale down that he was talking about, the window of opportunity for you to do that is very, very small and in often cases unpredictable, right? So I think from a tech standpoint, you really need to deploy not only machine learning models, but a more optimized way on how the auto scaling will happen so that you are able to respond to the spike in real time while maintaining costs, right? Because you don't have a luxury of over provisioning. And there are a set of things that you can do. One of the profound ones that we've seen in recent past, and Epic Games happens to be a big example of it, is leveraging innovation that we developed on chipset called Graviton. That compared to some of the x86 instances, 40% better price performance combination. And they, for Fortnite stack, they are completely on Graviton because that gives them the performance and the agility that we talked about. And I think Moonfrog is also 15-20% move to Graviton. So I think these are the kind of things that we need to constantly look at and innovate because you need to scale responsibly and while lowering down the cost. So you have to look at all nooks and corners, all the innovation that a cloud service provider can bring to continuously look at avenues that you could be scaling responsibly, if I may use that term.
Absolutely. Avneet, I know you touched upon this earlier, but safety, security, and of course addiction are some instances that need adequate attention. How can companies create safe playing environments and improve fraud analysis?
See, it's very important for companies like us to cater to customer experiences. So, I mean, fraud analysis is actually very important, and I mean, we at Baazi Games, we take that very seriously since player experience is at our core. So what we do is we, in real time using Kinesis, we are streaming events and feeding them to our backend systems and analyzing gameplay data behavior and merging that with the past data of the players and then trying to determine whether the genuineness of a session, right? And then taking decisions on the anomalies that we are facing. And so I think that's for gaming industry, that's very important. See, I think addiction, I think that's a very good question that you came. I think that's something, I think all of the gaming companies in India have come together and are ardently working towards it. I mean, we at Baazi Games, we take that very seriously. We are very proactive about it. analyzing the transactions that the user is making, whether he's winning or losing, and then contacting the users ourselves that, okay, hey, you're losing a lot, maybe you need to cool down. And we have a self-service portal as well, so that users can put limits themselves. And we have an in-house counselor as well for people who think they're getting addicted. They can take guidance from an in-house counselor as well.
Wow, interesting. Is that something you guys also do, Guru, Rajat?
So obviously, I think when it comes to safety and security, the basic stuff about following the guidelines and principles is a given, and that is something that is a no-brainer. But then post that also comes your subjectivity, like how much are you willing to stretch that? I think we have tried to make those decisions. It's not easy. There's a lot of gray area. Like we, for example, have shied away from real money gambling and gaming and stuff. But that's not to say it's wrong or anything of that sort. But then there are some principles that certain companies follow, and I think as long as we keep to that, we are okay. And fraud analytics is obviously a big deal in the terms of like people end up bullying as the games get more social and stuff. People end up bullying each other and stuff, so that's a very big concern. A lot of our use cases are solved by real-time analytics that way. We continue to evolve. It's sort of a chicken and mouse game, but yeah, we continue to evolve there. I don't think we are perfect.
No, this is like one area which is like, in my opinion, the most critical, one of the very critical areas there. And there are two aspects of it. Like we talked about two things, like one was fraud prevention there, and second is responsible gameplay there. So on the fraud side, like basically, it's again, unless you have very, very good algorithms backed by data science to establish connection, because there are two kinds of frauds that can happen. Like one is, as a user, I created multiple identities, and now I want to play with multiple identities, land up on the same table, and leading to collusion there. Now, how do you detect that and prevent that from happening? So we have sophisticated algorithms that in real time, when you say, find me a table, we will establish that these two people, when play together, there is a difference in pattern compared to when they don't play together, and we don't let them score the same table. So that's the kind of like algorithm or data science-based systems you need to create so that you prevent that from happening itself there. And a lot of it is driven by data backing there. Avneet touched about responsible gameplay. We actually have a team of data scientists whose job is to say that, can I detect overindulgence? Many of us will say that, like, yes, like we will ask our users to play more and more. We actually have a team which detects overindulgence to say that, like, even in this days, what kind of pattern is it? Is it like playing too much, playing too more? And can we even predict before overindulgence happens then? And we have systems in place, automatic systems, which when they detect it, throws up an intervention right in the game itself there, where we direct them to counseling, we direct them to set limits, and all of that is actually sponsored by us there. Like. So people may ask that, okay, like they may ask in jest that, okay, is this real? And I can tell that this is real, like there's a team of data scientists just working on this aspect.
I think, you know, I mean, that's largely to do with the flow of big data. So with of course the flow of big data, how are companies sort of looking to improve the playing experience with targeted personalization, ongoing stimulation and motivation, and multi-device access? Avneet, maybe you can throw your views on that.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, see, player experience is very, very important for us. So what we do is, I mean, poker is a very nuanced skill game, right? It has a steep learning curve, so it takes time to learn the game. So a customer can be at its early life cycle, right, when he's trying to learn the game. So that time we're leveraging big data, and what we're doing is we're presenting him real-time statistics of himself and the opponents that he's playing with. Since in online poker you can't see who you're playing with. So we're presenting him those statistics so that he can make good judgmental calls and get better at the game. Whereas when a user has become matured, right? So on our platform, a mature user is spending more than 2 hours every day, and that's a very big number. So providing him the right content, I mean, like we have animated emoticons, right? Where you can express yourselves while you're playing the game. And we customize those emoticons based on big data by analyzing what kind of emoticons are the users using, at what time are they using. Are they using these set of emoticons when they're winning, or are they using these set of emoticons when they're losing, and then recommending them the right set of emoticons and leveraging big data. That helps us a lot. One other thing that helps, I think, the game developers a lot is that where are your users spending their most time on? I mean, are they tracking screen time and tracking clicks is very important. And if they're, for example, if a user is spending more time on finding a particular game, right? So then you can optimize your flow and recommend him games automatically so that he spends less time finding the game and more time enjoying and playing the game.
Rajat, Guru, in that sense, how is sort of big data or data helping you build products specific for India?
So, in our DNA, in fact, we call ourselves as science of gaming. So, it's all about, that's the motto. And the way we have taken this challenge is that, it's about personalization, hyper-personalization, but it has to be integrated in a very seamless way where you don't feel that something happened. For example, at Games 24/7, when you enter our product, the personalization starts from when you enter the product itself, to say that, okay, you are here to play Rummy. I, from the data, should know whether you want to play a 5 paisa a point Rummy or a 5 rupee a point Rummy there. And I should be able to, by default, make that your setting there. So one click play, you can enter there. You want to add a cache. I know I should be able to predict whether you will like to add 200, 500 or 5,000 there. That's the tile that should be visible to you there. When I serve you offers, so we have a highly scalable system that kind of serves 100 million offers a day. When you serve an offer, based on your profile, based on your preference, I know that you like a bonus cash compared to you like an instant cash, or you like a ticket to a bigger tournament there. And all of that has to happen seamless to the user, and to be each of that is a real-time decision that's happening. So there are millions of real-time decisions that are happening every day there. Now your question around specific to India, so some of these concepts are very applicable worldwide. Coming to India, in India, that variation in fact exaggerates. It goes by region. It goes by the kind of, usually you will see it goes by the profile of the user in terms of the age. But in India, the regional variations are very, very significant as well. Combine that with your personal preferences, that takes hyper-personalization to a very, very different scale there. So for us, it's about data, having an ability to predict what a user will like in real time, measure it and correct if we are wrong in our predictions, is what happens. And in India, the variation is just too much from expertise level of a typical player coming from south might be very different coming from north. Now, that changes the entire game experience. I need to direct more in terms of their beginner journey when a user from north is coming in, and I need to give them more tools that, okay, ideally you should have dropped this hand. This hand was not to be played there. So that kind of variation and accounting for that variation in a science-based system is, I think, what helps us.
Guru, is that something that you also see in terms of regional variation?
Pretty much. I think, obviously, with around, I think India does not lead in terms of the revenue in terms of gaming, but it does lead in terms of the number of installs and people coming to play. The last stat that I read is 15% of the world's installs come from India. So scale is guaranteed. We do have a lot of data. Moonfrog generates about 50 billion events, if I remember correctly. To be able to manage that kind of infrastructure, it's significant. There are a lot of companies which are just big data companies which handle that kind of scale only for the data management, but obviously with infrastructure like AWS and Redshift and stuff, significantly helped us manage that with a small team. Similar use cases for us, coming from push notifications specifically, how do you get users back into the system? Most of this is about understanding different types of users. You cannot push it too much, you cannot push it too less. That sort of pattern repeats itself in multiple things, like game difficulty levels. It can't be too difficult, it can't be too hard, it can't be too easy. So just finding that right thing, and it is extremely different for every user. Big data definitely helps. We continue to use that in an automated way. I think at that scale, it becomes super important to start to use it in an automated way.
I think we'll come back to the revenue bit in just in some time. But Satinder, as service providers, how will the gaming industry evolve with artificial intelligence and machine learning? And what's been your experience when it comes to real data analytics?
I'll start with the analytics one first and then get to machine learning. I think if you look at some of the use cases that my fellow panelists have talked about, and you look at the tech implications of it, there are three profound things that will come to your mind. The first one is the volume, right? 50 billion transactions every day. Now, that's not a small number. The second one is really around real time. And from a tech standpoint, that's quite profound because some of the sampling technologies that are pretty acceptable in other industries and other use cases do not tend to prove effective when it comes to gaming, largely because there are times when there is very intense activity. Right? So we are talking about 30x scaling that is happening. So there are very intense moments. And the traditional sampling technologies will not give you the insights. And the third one is really around making it real time. And Rajat talked about that, look, if there is a collision that is happening, I want to detect that in real time and respond to it. So I think these are kind of things that you need to look at from an analytics standpoint. Quickly expanding on to the machine learning part, look, whether it's content generation to fraud detection to personalization, machine learning is everywhere. And there is no better way to explain it. And Rajat uses this term, that we are not a data-driven enterprise. We are a machine learning-driven enterprise, right? And the kind of use cases that we've worked with Rajat, the machine learning is embedded into every one of them. And one of the things that we've seen where we are helping our customers with is when you look at machine learning, obviously for startups that are there, you would be thinking, do I require this very complex? Do I require battery of people? How complicated is it? Am I going to get my return on investment? There are easy to use API-driven machine learning services that AWS provides. As an example, we have this service which is around personalization. And Voodoo, and I'm sure you are aware, they're a gaming major. They use this service to improve their recommendation systems. And that cut down the time that they required by 53% or so, and almost like a billion inferences every day, and improve their personalization efficiency by 15%. Now that's quite profound. You've got these technologies, advanced technologies in a ready-to-consume API manner, and I think those are the ones that you can start taking advantage of. And there are similar ones around forecasting and others as well.
Rajat, so when it comes to, what do you think are some of the biggest blind spots or pitfalls plaguing companies that are looking to manage behavioral data today, and also in leveraging data to increase LTV of a gamer?
So one thing that we all talked about, that data, the capturing part has become easier and easier. And as we talked about the 50 billion events a day or multi-terabytes of data a day, because everything can be instrumented and the data can be captured easily, that problem everyone has solved, where we acquire a lot of data there. To me, sometimes the blind spot is augmenting that data with the capabilities, both human and from an infrastructure perspective, to analyze that data there. Where many times we say, okay, we have acquired this data, now what should I do with that data there? Do I even have capability to process the data? Do I have human capital to process the data? Have I hired enough data scientists to say that can create models that can actually process that data and make real sense out of it there? And the third part, so usually I have seen that we go very aggressive on acquisition of data there. We go more slightly lax on infrastructure in terms of processing the data. And we go even lesser on actually saying that once I made that decision, I played that decision, have I closed the feedback loop? And can I constantly churn this model innovation faster and faster? Like, what does it take for me to improve my model and roll out the next version of that model? And is that cycle a month? Is that cycle a 7 days? Is that cycle a quarter? And that's what we do not, in my opinion, sometimes we give a lot of focus on acquisition, lesser on processing, and even lesser on feedback, and not creating those, unless all three are in sync, your flywheel will not churn faster.
Satinder, would you like to add to that in terms of what you see as some of the biggest pitfalls?
So I think I briefly covered that. What Rajat is talking about, I completely agree with it. The ingestion technologies are maturing and matured, and I think making insights out of the data requires very, very different set of technologies. It's not that here is this tool A which will help me, because the models are constantly changing. And so the agility part of your making sense out of the data is also sometimes directly dependent on type of technology that you use. And how do you keep on leveraging these different technologies? As an example, I mean, Spark is something that all of you are using, and who heard of it 6-7 years back? No one, right? So the technology is going to evolve, and your capability of bringing the right tool for the right job becomes very, very important as far as making insights of the data is concerned.
Guru, I want to come back to you. Earlier when we were talking about revenues, for a very long time, freemium models were, of course, or even now, I think that still continues to be, one of the key areas to bring in revenue. How can companies sort of diversify their revenue? Will it be more social interactions? How does that work out as we go forward?
Yeah, obviously for us, the freemium model has worked really well. I think it will continue to do well in the Indian sort of setup. But I mean, Moonfrog specifically has also moved into more of in-app purchases, more than the ads kind of revenue. Earlier it was difficult in the Indian setup, but now because of the payment, less friction in the payment gateways and stuff like that, it's become a lot easier. I think there are definitely different modes of investment, like we do sort of invest in creating offline distribution network and other kind of models where we can get closer to the user to sort of push him to payments and stuff like that with a more personal kind of aspect to it. So that's one area where we continue to invest in terms of revenue.
I think we are running short on time for this panel discussion. So I'll throw one question to Satinder here. Satinder, there's no one-size-fits solution for unique challenges that companies have. So in that sense, how is AWS tailoring its solutions within agile tech architecture, infrastructure to enable gaming companies to innovate faster?
I'll keep it very short, and this is something that I briefly touched upon during my opening remark. The first one is providing you the right platform capabilities and architectural interventions so that you're able to scale fast. The second thing that we are heavily invested on is empowering developers so that they can integrate easily with the platform capabilities, whether it's direct integration with gaming engines, how do you consume some of the platform services right from the gaming console, rather than doing a plumbing and thinking about how do you... So there are a range of services that we have recently announced, and I would encourage the audiences to go and look for them, because that's really about simplifying the experience for your customers, but at the same time making it very, very fast and agile for your developers.
I think we can now invite questions from the audience. Please introduce yourself and tell us who the question is directed as. Yes, the gentleman there.
My name is Shubham. I'm from Play Simple Games. So my question is regarding this data, right? As we all know, you all are, everybody like in gaming, they generated billions of events, right? Like Play Simple also have billions of events of scale. Now, the thing which I feel right now, which is going in the industry, is the concept of distributive ownership of data, like data mesh. Now, now what are the challenges which you feel like if teams are owning their data, there is no central data team, like which is managing this huge amount of chunks of data, and everybody is basically shipping the data as a product. So I feel like there's a lot of challenges in this area. It's still unexplored. So what are your take on this? Like,
Rajat, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can take that. No, that's definitely a challenge. And in fact, like at Games 24/7, we have outlined an initiative which we have named it as data democratization. There, because the challenge you said, like we pump in a lot of data, every team pumps in, but what we did was we went ahead to say that like, yes, this data came from different teams, had different schemas, etc. But can we create a process where we can actually serve this data as a service as well? So we created a layer where all this data coming from different sources finally gets assembled at a place, and we expose it as a set of attributes that you can configure, and automatically you can say that I need access to these 4 attributes, which might be 2 of them from my team and 2 from other teams. And can that be created as an API and given to me there? So we run it more like where we have created a layer which we call it as data as a service, which encapsulates all this data and complexity of accessing that data. And that's what we call it as data democratization. Are we there 100% yet? No. But that's a problem that we're trying to solve there.
Avneet, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as Rajat correctly said, very quickly a lot of data can become a data swamp. So it's very, very important to have correct set of processes in order to process your data. It's very important to take actions and close the feedback loop. So setting up the right processes and making that set of data accessible to the entire team so that they can make informed decisions is very important.
So on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. It's been a fun session, and I hope the audience really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with Ivy Cap Ventures.